All right. Welcome, folks. Welcome back to Larger, Freer, More Loving. As always, I'm Matt Levine.
I'm Dwight Lewis.
So, last time we did something new for the show, a quick cast with Christina Van Dyke, an in-depth account of some one individual issue that really grabs our attention off of our planned episodes. And today we're following up with our second quick cast, this time with artists and activists of the Talking Wing Collective, Blake Lavia and Tzimu Aguilar-Izzo, who are hosting the North Country Art, Land, and Environment Summit throughout the month of September and into October. So thanks so much for being here, you two. And we'd like to just start by having you two introduce yourselves in the summit, please.
Okay, go ahead. My name is, like you said, Tzimu Aguilar-Izzo. I use they, them pronouns. I am an artist, activist, organizer, originally from Guanajuato, Mexico, Chichimeca, Nahua territory. And
my name is Blake Lavia. I also use they, them pronouns. And I am originally from Italy.
Thank you. So could you tell us about this summit that you put together? How did this come together? What are you focusing on? Yeah, how's that going?
So we started working on this summit in collaboration with St. Lawrence University last September. And at first it was supposed to be an in-person summit here in upstate New York, the North Shawnee territory. But as the COVID crisis hit, it became an all online summit. Our hope for the region was to connect different struggles and different endeavors that different people in the different communities that make upstate New York are working on, whether it's agriculture, whether it's engineering that can improve land management, or the struggles to protect rivers and clean rivers. So this was our goal, putting together this summit, bringing together voices that can give a picture of what's happening environmentally in this region and what are future solutions to make the future of this region better and prosperous.
And when we're talking to you all, the summit is halfway completed. We've had 2 weeks, 2 busy weeks of panel discussions and art exhibitions. And so there are 2 more weeks ahead. We just finished conversations about water and food sovereignty, and the weeks coming up, we have the conversations about environmental justice and racism, and also about the environmental future of the region and the world.
Awesome. So that being said, will you go ahead and give us your website and maybe any handles that you might have, so then the people that can listen, the people that are listening, can go ahead and follow the summit?
You can go at nocoenvironment.org. nocoenvironment.org.
And we were very low tech when it comes to social media, unfortunately, with the summit, which could be a good or bad thing. However, our handle for our collective is at Talking Wings.
At Talking Wings. Okay. So you guys heard that. If you're listening, go ahead and follow away. So one of the things that first grabbed our attention about the summit was the fact that you guys are focused really on the intersection between art, land, and environment. Art is one of the things that we've really attempted, or we're starting to attempt to make a really important focus on the podcast, especially next season, really thinking about making this the main focus. Can you talk to us a little bit about the role that art plays in activism in relationship to art and the environment? So the role that art plays in activism in relationship to the land and environment.
So there are a lot of ways to talk about the land, the environment. We are usually used to hear scientists talk about it, engineers talk about it, historians, philosophers, art historians, but art, as art itself, has a very important role and vital role for the communities and the people that can access it, because it adds an additional language to what we understand as being the natural world. It adds a further level of understanding that science and history and generally words cannot tackle. So this is why we brought it. We brought it into the picture because we didn't want only to have people talking about environment from a scientific, historical, or from a political point of view. We wanted to add that layer that is the fabric that keeps societies and communities together.
And just, thank you so much for that. And just to add one more little thing, in talking about anything in this world, we'll engage in some form of storytelling. You all both are master storytellers. So in telling a story, we need to engage, just like Blake said, in every single language possible. Right now, we're speaking in the settler colonialist language of English.
Yeah,
It's not a barrier. It's heavy. It weighs on us. It weighs on the discourse. So in speaking about the land in just one way, in some ways, it's a violent omission. It's a form of systematic structural violence.
Yes.
So it's necessary to do what Blake said, to add other forms of language, other forms of storytelling to create a more complete picture.
So you talked about art being able to kind of bring cultures together in a way that science, history, and other things seem to be that it can't do. How then do you see yourself even working within or working alongside historians and scientists, even with bringing in that additional language? How do you see yourself working alongside them? Or do you not think it's a good thing? Like, that's the thing.
No. I think it needs to happen. So if you look at in the panels, we've always made sure in these last two panels to have had artists who are speaking alongside people who have different knowledges and forms of expertise.
Okay.
We all have different lenses to see the world. And art is just one of those lenses. It's just another way of conceiving and understanding the world around. So yes, it needs to be in communication. All of these elements need to be communication with each other. You can't really segregate and divide them into boxes.
Yeah, no, I agree.
World, at this time, we need to connect. Sorry for interrupting.
No, I interrupted you. So that being said, do you think that then, I think oftentimes we look at things like history and science as being able to stand above, to be able to stand above nationality, be able to stand above cultures. But I'm listening to you now, and right off the bat, I'm looking at the ways that art can be, art doesn't have doesn't have like an actual spoken language in the ways that it could just be placed in front of you, right? And then you can then speak in your own language or speak in relationship to your own scientists. And so I'm listening to you now, and I almost want to say the way that Blake said that like art is probably the most essential language. And that's a language that we've been keeping out of the conversation. In the West, right, has actually been manipulating us and controlling us by actually keeping art out of the picture. Yeah. At least that's what I'm getting from you. And I'm like, y'all right. Y'all are right. Y'all are right. 100%.
Couldn't agree more. Love what you said. Couldn't agree more.
No, but I mean, just especially when it comes to issues of the environment, right? Because, you know, we have an Earth here that we are sharing across the globe, and the only way we're going to make progress on the horrific environmental degradation and destruction is going to be communicating over national boundaries, especially these national boundaries that have been created in these horrific settler colonial ways, right? So art there seems to me to have that language of creating community that's so unbelievably essential for making any progress on environmental justice. So this is interesting because we also try to emphasize justice and community here. And as I've been watching the summit come together, it's been fantastic to see the community of activists for justice that you've brought together. I mean, this last week's panel on food sovereignty with Claudia Ford, with Gachi Juni Fox, Carmen Musan, Himani Gupta Carlson, and Catherine Bennett was just breathtaking. So I'm wondering, just what has it been like working with this community? What will you take away from this experience of working with this community?
I think overall it's been amazing getting to know these people that in their own corner are working to make this land better for everybody and for the future generation. The last panel you mentioned, they were all farmers and people that specifically work with the land. So like farming, it's essential. It's what keeps us all alive. And as we go on into a future that's becoming more and more uncertain, are these little farmers, these people that are working the land in a way that's sustainable, are going to keep us alive in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and we have talked with people that have protected the river, that are making policy now to still protect their community from pollutants that otherwise would go overlooked. And I think talking to all these different people has been enlightening, mostly because I realized how much we are affected by the doomsday rhetoric that we are constantly bombarded by.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that is shown from a scientific point of view, from the point of view of this global climate crisis, is that everything is burning. The forests in Siberia are burning, the West Coast is burning, the ice caps are melting, there are oil spills, and we can't do anything about it. They keep on building pipelines, they keep on fracking, and there's really nothing we can do. We can just watch. This is not true. It's not true. That's not the case. And it's not true that nothing is happening and that people are doing nothing. And seeing all these people that we have managed to get together, it's like a tangible proof that is not true. That there are people that are working there and that are succeeding, and not only in this country, but in other countries as well.
Yeah.
So I think this has been the most beautiful thing, going against the idea that we are doomed and seeing that instead there are things that we can do, and there are things that are being done, and there are things that we can bring forward with more discussions and more sharing of the knowledge that is not dooming, but that it is positive, that it is, yes, we can do it. So I think this has been the most beautiful part, at least for me, of getting to know all these people, and at the same time, seeing them interact. Because most often people that work with this kind of struggles are isolated. Everybody works in their own bubbles. And in our country, it's the most bubbly bubble of all. There are the bubble of universities, the bubble of these regions, the bubble of the tiny towns, and nobody talks. Nobody knows what's happening. We know what's happening in the Arctic more than what's happening here. So seeing people coming together like this has been like, wow. So these people are now talking. So maybe these people in the future can work together and connect these struggles. And
just to add one quick thing to everything that you said, when you were talking about these narratives, because again, we're talking about narratives, narratives about where we situate ourselves in the world, narratives that tie all of us together. Us as, it's hard to talk about people as a species, but kind of the way I've seen other human beings is when people notice that someone is doing something that works, when people see the experience of something that works, people usually follow along. They usually follow along more than when you go out there, you say, you have to do this, and you're yelling in their face. People stop listening. But when you are there working with other people and you see their example, things start shifting. So again, we have been, in some ways, have been extremely more than lucky, been blessed to have met all these people that are doing this. And that's one of the things that I'm taking away, is that yes, we all can. And that hopefully other people will take that away as well. But yes, these people are doing it, so you can do it too.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's really good. This is making me think also, we're going through, I'm speaking, I am Black, and there's some things that we've been going through this summer, right? In relationship to justice. And I think that we've actually seen movement in relationship to justice to some extent, right? We're not seeing the level that we want, right? But I think the images that we see of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor actually helping with that in a way that we haven't been able to see those because we didn't have these before, right? And it's a different form of images, and it's a different form of language that's outside of this spoken Western type of language. But it is, those images are, I think, shifting shifting the landscape. And that being said, I really want to ask a question surrounding race and gender now, gender in particular, which seems to be a central concern also for the summit and for environmental justice. Can you talk to us a little about gender and racial oppression and resistance, and how that became a part of, or if it was a part of your thought process in relationship to putting on the summit? And then can you give us any preview of events that you might have that will, in the remaining events, that might deal with these issues of gender and race in relationship to environmental justice?
I can talk briefly about how we chose the panelists, and then you can maybe go more in depth. So we in the North Country is, we can agree that it's not a diverse area, and it's really a bubble on its own, and racism is rampant and violent.
Wow.
So starting from that, our objective has been to feature mostly, try to feature as much as possible women, or not necessarily white men. So that has been one of our first intents, feature people that usually in the greater discourse are completely muted. Because even when we talk about the sciences or the history, it's usually a white academic man that tells everything. So that has been our primary goal, to give the voice to women and people that were not white, and particularly not only to white men.
And of course, in working through anything, you have to also acknowledge your own positionality. Okay, so I'm of Nahua, Purepecha, and Mediterranean descent, but I grew up in Mexico, and I grew up looking very white in Mexico. I grew up with that background. So I'm gonna acknowledge, first of all, that background, which off the bat has its own multiple layers of violence and history. In this country, if people don't read my name, they just look at my face. And I have had people stay in my face and say, what, your nose this, your nose that, that means you're from there. I've had that happen. But most of the time, they look at me and they think white. So I am coming to this background, into this place, into the North Country. Well, maybe people may look at me as somebody that is not like the region, but I do look white. So I have to acknowledge that part of me. Originally, I do consider myself someone who uses they, them pronouns, someone who is not he, him, male. However, I do look he, him, male. So again, start off the bat, I am coming with that baggage. We all carry that baggage on our faces, on our skin, and also inside of our brains. Working in anything, we have to acknowledge that and try to move forward in that direction while acknowledging our own faults. And in this day and age, especially with everything you mentioned, with the amazing movement that's happening this summer when it comes to Black Lives Matter, it's important we always acknowledge those things. So yes, our intent was to, more than everything, always step back and then try to see what voices in our community have been mostly silenced.
Keep going.
No, sorry. And a lot of those voices in this area also have been the Akwesasne Mohawk community. And there is a divide, like mentioned, these bubbles of these communities that are not connecting. And I've talked to professors, I'm not going to say what school or whom, but I've talked to professors in the region who you ask environmental justice, what's happening with environmental justice in the region? What's happening, what people are working on amazing projects in the region? And they've been thinking, and they were thinking, like, I don't know. My focus is the Arctic. I don't know what's happening here.
Lord.
So that's extreme racism right there. That's extreme disconnect with their community. So this needs to break. These walls need to come down. Yes, what were you about to say?
No, I was just sitting here and I'm like, you are completely right. First off, I like on the positionality thing, understanding your positionality, because James Baldwin talks about in The Fire Next Time that self-acceptance is important to doing any type of justice work. And so right when you said that, that's all I could think about is this like idea. It's like, if you don't know yourself and you're walking into a space and you're attempting to do justice work, It's like you're doing a fraught job of it. You're not doing a great job of it. And so that you said that was like, I literally got like some chills. I'm not gonna lie, I'm still feeling them, because I was like, this is what so many people miss. It's like they miss the fact that they come in with some particular positionality, and they think that they just are like gonna buddy up to people. And it's like without accepting themselves. And it's like, wait, yo, like white people do this in Black communities all the time. Like, come on over, and they want to hang out, and it's like, I don't know you. And people like you are not just to people like me. Like, so you need to come on your knees if you're gonna come. Like, you can't come up to me with your chest pumped and $100 bill. Like, leave me alone. Like, we've seen y'all come in and out of my community. And so no, I heard you and I was like, man, this is a thing that for me is probably is one of the biggest struggles I think that the white Western community struggles with. Is this exact thing. It's a thing that beats me up anyways all the time. Sad. I will say one more thing, and this is where so I am actually I can't say this because I'm gonna put some. So I was at some meeting, and this particular organization was attempting to put together a BLM statement of standing behind the BLM movement. And so they have a committee that is putting it together. They bring it to the larger committee, which is everyone. And there is a white woman that stands up and she's like, I'm mad that I wasn't allowed to be a part of putting this BLM group statement together. I turned off my camera and I was like, I wish I had enough privilege in the world to be mad about not being able to be a part of like creating justice for Black people. Like, I was like, I wish that I could be like, I'm so mad that I can't create justice for Black people. Like, I was like, this woman crazy. And this is like her not understanding her positionality. That is like, you might need to just sit back and sit in the back of the room and help when we need you. But that might be the best space for you right now. And so, no, I'm only speaking to this and speaking to it a lot because I think this is something that the white world need to hear. That's something the white world need to hear. Know your position.
Absolutely, we do. Because I mean, the part of whiteness is just assuming that we don't have a position. That ours is just the default way of looking in the world, and everything else is defined in terms of the way we look at the world. So yes, we need to be reminded of this absolutely constantly. So again, this is another thing that I really appreciate, both the activism and the education that's going along with this summit that you've been doing here. So as you said earlier, there are 3 events remaining. You've got a panel on environmental justice, a panel on environmental futures, and a screening of your documentary, Burning or Breathing. So can you tell us about that? What can we expect out of the rest of the summit?
So in the next panel, we're going to have a number of speakers from around this region. Most of the people are going to be from Haudenosaunee territory. However, the moderator of the panel is actually going to be from the outside. So it's going to be Agnes Williams, who is actually someone that is who knows Matt, has collaborated with Matt many times before, and who's going to be featuring this next panel about environmental justice around the doctrine of discovery. So in talking about environmental justice, we're going to have people speaking about other different issues of land rights, Anakwasasne. People speaking about, well, there's going to be Stephanie Morningstar who's going to be speaking about issues regarding the Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust and how they view land within the colonialist land perspective. People speaking is going to be Craig Arquette speaking from Akwesasne of his many years of kind of overseeing the Superfund site, where these companies, GM and Alcoa, went and poisoned the rivers, poisoned the land, poisoned the Akwesasne community. He's talking about his work overseeing that. We're also going to have Nikki Houghton Patterson from Adirondack Diversity speaking about her perspective on environmental justice in this region, in specifically the Adirondacks, and her working inside of the Rwandas itself, which is itself its own complicated story. So there we're going to have everything environmental justice through doctrine of discovery. Next panel is going to be, again, environmental futures. We're going to have people from, it's hard to say this because these are colonial distinctions, but 4 different government bodies who are going to be speaking. People speaking from, that is people known as Canada, but it's Haudenosaunee Territory, Cornwall in Canada, in what people know as Canada. People speaking from Canton and Potsdam, New York, Haudenosaunee Territory, what people call the United States. People speaking from the Akwesasne, the Council of Akwesasne, and people speaking from the St. Lucius Mohawk tribe. So 4 different government distinctions all joining together to discuss the environmental future of this region. A future in which the climate crisis is going to inspire mass mobilizations of people. People are going to move into this area looking for the clean water. So how is this region going to react? How is Akwesasne going to interact with the people who are going to be coming, maybe trying to take their land again? So that's that summit. The last and not least is going to be the screening of our film, which is kind of more about this humble attempt to connect this region with other movements. So it's more than just a screening. We're going to be inviting speakers from the River Sentinels from Jacomulco, Veracruz, who managed to stop Odebrecht, a Brazilian giant, ugly corporation, from building a dam on their river. Speakers from Sendas, a group in Mexico, in the Antigua watershed in Mexico, that is managing successfully to create a network of farmers to protect the watershed. So again, more than just a screening, it's connecting the issues of this watershed with other watersheds, making a global picture.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
No, that's fantastic. So I just want to, that sounds not only like fantastic topics there, but that lineup, Agnes Williams with her expertise on the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Stephanie Morningstar is fantastic. Nikki Hilton Patterson has done absolutely wonderful work since she's been here working for the Adirondack Diversity Initiative. So yeah, again, folks listening, please join this event this Wednesday at 6:30 for this panel on environmental justice in the North Country. Sorry to interrupt you, Dwight.
Oh, no. That was a plug that needed to happen. Shoot, I'm going to say that 100%. So first off, you talked about the doctrine of discovery. For those that are listening, if you want to listen more about the doctrine of discovery, go to episode 5. Don't wait, just freaking do it. And you can hear more about that. Then you guys moved on to this environmental future and the film. I love that you're almost doing an education, then you're moving to the region, and then there's a connecting the region to the globe. I just was like, that is like, I'm sorry, like that's really, it's like important to work that way. Educate people on why they should be involved, like work from the region out. So many people want to work from out in. And so I really think that you guys are just like doing good work, and you guys both look so damn young. And I've been like, you guys, this is the first time I've cussed on the entire podcast. You guys made me do it. So because of that, I've got to ask the question that's burning for me and for my students, is how can young people like not only get involved in your work, but also how can what's some advice that you would give them for being able to make the movement from like, this 19-year-old college student that doesn't really know what they're doing to doing work like you guys are doing, to doing work like activism in relationship to land, art, race, any type of activism that's at that intersection of also doing art. Because I think that's the only thing, like, I think you guys are completely right. Art connects the mind and the heart in a way that reason just can't do it. And so I'm always trying to get my students to do art, but it's like, how would you speak to them?
So I think, particularly if you're still 19, it's like growing into the process. So it's, I think, little by little realizing what you're interested in and realizing what struggle you feel like you can contribute to. And everybody's different and everybody has their own interests. So if you cannot ask a person to do what their brain don't want to do, nor their heart to want to do. Another thing that I think is very important is trying to break free from the cages that this society has put us in. We go to institutions that are schools or any other kind of situation in which they expect you to decide what's going to be your career. And once you decide what's going to be your career, whether or not kind of you get there, because the world is changing anyway from the previous generations, but you're going to have to be that and that only. And once you get into that framework, you're going to have to act according to where you are going to be in the social class of the society in which you are growing up in. And I think we need to break out of that, because you might like science, but you might like art, but you might like history. And I think nowadays, with this technological world, with this world that is asking us to be more and more fluid to the point that there's no security anymore, that's actually the freedom we can start to take in ourselves. So I think break free from the cages of what you think you ought to do to be part of this capitalist structure and work from there. And once you work from there, look around. Where are you living? Who are the people that surround you? And little by little, like from what you know of the history of the area and what you know of the people you've talked to, start moving out from there and say, what can we do to change things? And everybody's different. There might be situations in which there are people that are capable of standing in front of the police and use their bodies to protect and fight. But that's not everybody. You cannot ask that from everybody. And that's not all the struggle we need. Everybody in their own little way can, by sharing, by talking, and by offering what they can offer, change something. And we came to this area to college, and then we moved out, we went to other places, and our process has been realizing what happened in those places. So reading about the history of those places, and then realizing what are the resources we are drinking, like in Boston, where is it coming from? What is the history of that water? What violence lies underneath it? And little by little, that has been forming us as people and has been bringing us to now to make this summit, thinking that, okay, we have lived in our country, but as outsiders, as students, I came from the other side of the world with a background that was completely different, with a history that's completely different. And I came here and I inhabited this land, and I didn't know almost anything about this land. I didn't even quite know that New York was a state when I moved here and I was 18. And then little by little, up to now, because I'm 28, I realized what was the history of this land. And as a person that has inhabited it, I decided, well, what can I do to help it? People are not talking to each other. Maybe without putting my word into it, but my personal contribution has been the art. And it's the art of an outsider that communicates with the environment that hosted me for years. And that's my personal contribution, but I didn't want to put my voice into other people. I wanted the people of this area to talk for themselves and communicate themselves. So I think that's what I can say to a young person. Start little and move with what you want to do and the change you want to see. And I think.
Yeah, and just to kind of conclude that, even though it does not need any concluding the slightest, just one last thing to say is that it's always necessary to, one, look deep inside oneself. Like you just mentioned about the positionality, it's important to look and acknowledge one's own role in society and really look at the fact that one has what you could say ecological footprint, you could say racial footprint, but all of our footprints in some ways are covered in blood. The blood of our ancestors or the capitalist system in which we live. So we need to acknowledge that. And then, and what blood is, the blood is seeping onto a land. You need to understand the history of that land. In our case, Blake mentioned very quickly that we lived for a brief time in Boston. And we did not, we were coming in as an outsider without asking really permission to enter a space and without knowing the history of that space. It's necessary to really delve deeper into all of your histories. Know your histories, know the legacies where you stand, and act from there. But you need to know that first, because if you don't, the castle's going to crumble. You need to move forward from there.
So I got two statements before Matt talks. Grab me there. break free of the ought, and all footprints are covered in blood. It's like there is a brokenness and like movement away from the brokenness of I'm gonna say America, but capitalism, imperialism, right? And I think there's a brokenness in all of us for being a part of this thing that we have to recognize. But I really heard in what you were saying, but also to break yourself away from the ought of what society tells you or how society tells you should exist in the world. But know that even breaking away from that ought doesn't mean that you're not dirty, you know. And I was like, you know, y'all right, yo, y'all are a great pair. Man, this works, 100%.
No, so thank you so much for joining us today, Blake and Tzimu. As Dr. Claudia Ford introduced your last event, we're in the middle of these triple pandemics of COVID-19, of systemic racism and climate change. And after your last response, I would add to that heteropatriarchal racial capitalism. And we really think that we can't make progress on any of these without making progress on all of them. So thank you so much for creating this space for folks to do that. And thanks for coming on the show to tell us about it. And we're looking forward to the rest of the summit.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Thank you for your comments, your questions, and just for bringing it all together.
Yes.
And thank you for making your space, the space of this show, part of that change that needs to happen. One of those mini incubators for the future to come.
Yes.
Well, we appreciate that so much. We appreciate that so much. Thank you for coming on.